people to pay attention to our number one rule at the Warrior Project, that you have to sign up with your own name. But well, it's a work in progress. We'll get there. All right, everybody. This is Dave Weigel, Family Court Fraud Warrior Project. We've got a very, very special week and special guest tonight. And I can tell you right now, in all honesty, that this gentleman changed the direction of my life. And this is where I have felt the hand of God in this mission, because I had two major events that happened in my case that just was like a light coming down from the stars and just saying that, okay, I got to do something about this here. One of them was, the parental alienation therapist that I work with, Charlie McCready, out in London, who had been working with about 1,000 families over 20 years, and highly recommended that I do not follow the path that I told him I was going to follow, and that is revealing and going after a narcissist head to head. And he had just told me that he's always seen it always turn out bad. And I said, as much as I respect that, I am committed to this, and I did it. And I asked him, I said, how many people have you consulted? And he told me almost 1,000. I said, how many people do you know have gotten their kids back through force this way? And he says, you're the first, Dave. You're the first in 20 years. That was one. And the other one was happening upon Richard Luthmann. I had made a number of calls to the press. Sarah Wallace never returned my phone calls. I had a cousin who worked as a cameraman for a local TV station in Connecticut for 30 years, had lunch with this woman for 20 years, the local investigative reporter. As soon as she found out what I was doing, refused to return my phone call. And as I've been in this fight as long as I have, I can tell you that Richard is a rare bird, even amongst the few journalists with the balls to actually report the truth, and actually report the pictures and the names of the attorneys and the judges. The very first article he wrote about me in December of 24 changed my life, changed the direction of my life. And what I mean about that,
23, Dave. It was 23.
Oh shit! It was 23. Oh my god! Oh my god! That long?
Yeah.
Wow. And because the thing was, a lot of us with this parental alienation that suffer silver bullets, they rewrite the story of who you are over many years, and they rewrote it to my own family. And after a while, okay, the worst thing about this is when you start believing the bullshit about you. It's soul destroying, right? So when I started this whole thing and everybody told me, don't do that, you're going to be airing your family's dirty laundry, embarrassing your kids. And I'm saying, no, this is felonies. This is the whole thing. You don't get it. I couldn't see that. I couldn't see it. It wasn't until Richard Luthmann actually encapsulated in the story and his storytelling in the way that he did it all of a sudden click. I seized the story of my life back in one article that he wrote. Okay. And then, I was still getting my ass kicked in the courts. Okay. It took a couple of more. And then when Richard Luthmann wrote designer child trafficker and my ex's attorney's picture that went viral, but not viral in a TikTok sense. It went to his whole world. And I've been trying to tell everybody the Google algorithm knows the difference between having your evidence published by a card-carrying journalist, right? Now Google says this is relevant. So this should go to the top of Google News to that attorney because everybody's got a Google account. Then it looks through the attorney's phone and says, who are all these important people? If it's relevant for this attorney, it must be relevant news for them. It got to his entire world. And in that one fell swoop, my chief abuser, and this guy could just pick and choose abusing me every week. Whatever he wanted to do to me, he did to me. And I was just his slave, okay? Barely staying alive. In that article, that flipped the script. Now he was my bitch, okay? And that's the power of the pen, okay? And this is what I've been trying to express to people in this community, okay, that you're not in a legal process. The mafia does not rule against the mafia. Okay, when it's 0% success, it becomes another thing. Okay. So with that ado, I don't want to take all of his thunder up here. Rich, why don't you take 20 minutes or so and just give people a history of who you are, where you came from, what drove you into this line of work?
So many people know I have a background in law. Most people don't know exactly what it is. And I'll tell you, I was a top New York City attorney for many years. I'm born and bred from Staten Island, New York. And I became the chair of the New York State Reform Party. And that Reform Party was a ballot access party in New York State, the same as the Republicans or the Democrats or the Conservatives. And it was about 2015 that I took the helm and I actually worked with, of all people, Curtis Lewa, who's running for mayor in the city of New York now, and several other people. And I got myself into a little bit of political trouble. A few people, little known people didn't like me. One of them's name was Mike McMahon. He was the district attorney in Richmond County. Another was a little known woman named Hillary Clinton. She really didn't like me for what I did in 2016. I was helping out Trump pretty hardcore and Roger Stone and a lot of his people. And, well, they say politics paybacks a bitch, and so they had a trap door ready for me. And I ended up spending 4 years in federal prison. For what I did, I'm not exactly sure, but they said that I actually robbed the Chinese out of scrap metal. And most of the people I talked to say I should have got a Congressional Medal of Honor for that as prison. But that being said, I had to do 4 years. On top of that, McMahon, the DA, who didn't like me, piled on a fake Facebook case. So he put a case together that said I made fake Facebook accounts in political campaigns, and therefore you have to go to prison for that, for violating the First Amendment, I believe.
For a fake Facebook account for what 350 million Americans have right now?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. So it was called the falsification of business records. And I think I'm doing that right now because I have my name Richard L. and not Richard Luthmann. I could actually technically be the heinous crime of falsification of business records. They get me for that because I'm not fully truthful, I guess, with my full last name, but I'll work on that. I went away. So then I get out in 2021, and I say to myself, but what can I do? Well, I know the courts, I know how to write, and I know how the sausages are made. And so the Reform Party, and being in a political party, you actually make the judges. You know how the grift happens. You know the political structure. I know, being a lawyer too, I know how it all works from soup to nuts, how you make the machine work. But I was a Reform Party. Part of the reason why they had to get rid of me was because I was not corrupt back then. I wouldn't take their bribes. I had people come and bribing me back then, to do this and that, and I wouldn't do it, so they had to make me go. But when I got out, I said, I could do something pretty special as a journalist, because you don't need a license to be a journalist. You just need the First Amendment. It says it right there. And with my knowledge of corruption in the system and my knowledge of how these things operate, I can go in there and really expose some of the real terrible issues that are going on. And, enter Frank Parlato, who's an excellent journalist for many years. And I was working with him first when I got out, and I really learned the ropes from him for investigative journalism. I was an investigator before that and a lawyer, but journalism has its own cadence and it has its own, it's a little bit of a learning curve. So I worked with him. And then I started doing more and more stuff on my own. And I met Dave, and we started doing a lot of family court stuff. I had done some stuff before that, but I really dug in and started doing a lot of family court stuff through my Substack. And then also now I have the familycourtcircus.com, and I have two other sites which are more regional focused, New York News Press or nynewspress.com and flgulfnews.com. But they're all those outlets and others where I'm a contributor, and I tell stories about the courts, and I tell stories about corruption, political corruption and judicial corruption, and all sorts of different things. There are other things I talk about too, other verticals. But I tell some of the stories that other people just won't tell for a lot of different reasons. And I will get into that a little bit. But family court, you look at the family court stuff, and it's one of those things that, I could tell you how bad it was. And I have not been someone, thank God. I've been divorced, but my divorce happened while I was away in prison. So I was not one of these 10-year, decade-long divorces like Dave and so many other people. But I could tell you how bad it was. But there are many other people out there that couldn't, even lawyers, even professionals, couldn't tell you how bad family court was. The people on this call know because they've been through it. It's been a baptism by fire. And so we have a situation in our media today where the family court stories aren't told, I think, the way that they should be. And I look at, like, and I said this before, I had the argument with Mike Volpe, who's my podcast partner on the podcast. Mike said, look, family court's more of a local thing. You know, it happens locally in a city or a state. And I said, no, that's a fallacy. Because you turn on Dateline, and Dateline is San Diego, California, Portland, Oregon, Denver, Colorado, Boston, Massachusetts, Orlando, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia. Every show is a different locale. It's a local story that goes national because of the egregious nature of the story. Well, some of the family court stories that we've heard just here in this group are more egregious than some of the serial killers that I've seen on Dateline. And the question then becomes, it's not the content that's the problem, it's not the story that's the problem, and it's not the ability to identify that's the problem. That's a big thing in media. You say, well, why is this important to me? Well, if you or someone you know has a child in America, this could happen to you. So everybody in America can identify with the family court story, the family court horrors. So there has to be another reason why the family court stuff is not, front and center the way really it should be and covered by the media. One thing that Volpe said, which I kind of agree with, is it's not a classic politicizing issue. So we have Fox News and CNN, and we have all the other cable news channels, and they make their money by picking an issue and picking a side and doing a perspective and really dividing the populace. Well, it works with certain issues. It works with, immigration. It works with women's rights. It works with other things. But when you look at the family court, you can't crack that nut with family court because it hits everybody, from far left to far right and everybody in between. Everybody that goes into that system is viewed as cattle. And plain and simple. Doesn't matter what your political persuasion is. It doesn't matter what your views are. The only thing that really does matter is your access to the decision makers, and basically your access to the corruption. That's really what happens. So that's one of the issues, is that family court can't be used as a tool by some of the large special interests to target or to segregate or to rile up or to cool down a portion of the population, because everybody's involved. The other part about it is you look at who the stakeholders are, and you look at the media. The media has to answer to stakeholders. It answers to the people that fund, the people that buy the advertisements, the people who do this, the people who do that. Well, who's the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest at any point opponent of family court reform? I would have to think that that's the trial lawyers lobby. At any point in time across the nation, in all the courts, the biggest lobby that's there, the people who are spending the most money to make sure that there is acrimony, that there's fighting, that there's crazy laws that people can't understand, that there are crazy procedures, that there's time delays, that there's this, that there's that, is the trial lawyers. Why? Because it makes lawyers money. Plain and simple. Okay, I saw a case that I'm looking at right now where there was a consent divorce in 2012. They had a divorce in 2012 by consent of the parties. The case is still continuing in 2025. Post-consent, there has been all sorts of custody and all sorts of contempt petitions and all sorts of this and all sorts of that. The lawyers saw, well, we let these people get off easy. They are worth many millions of dollars. Therefore, we're not done with them yet. And this is a sad state of affairs where we have it in our country today, because that's what we see. You take people and they look at family court litigants, and the children especially, as basically cattle to be culled. And, it doesn't matter whether you have money or you don't. If you have money, then they're going to make sure you don't have it. They're going to, the job and the game will be to hire another court-appointed person who will then recommend another appointed person to be hired, another appointed person to be hired, along with the lawyers and everything else, the guardian ad litem, the attorney for children, the parental coordinator, the this, the that, the other. Go down the list. It's out of control. So that's one issue there. But if you don't have money, right? If you don't have money, then that's no problem, because Uncle Sugar has the money. Title 4D. Title 4E, Violence Against Women Act. There's about 15 or so federal programs out there, and those federal programs are used to cover holes in state court funding. And the holes that they're really covering are holes that really shouldn't be there in the first place. It's lawyers that are making money because of this whole system that I just described, where people get appointed to do this, to do that, to the other thing. Now, we see the program for reform in this country, and there's really two aspects of it that I'm seeing from the legal perspective that have a chance at success, and a very good chance at success. The first is state legislative reform. We're seeing this in Arizona. They had a hearing today on the ad hoc committee on court orders. We've seen this in Idaho. We're seeing this in other places around the country where they open it up to the public and top advocates go and talk about the horrors of family court. And so you have Mark Fincham, who's a senator in Arizona. And Mark Fincham said it probably the best that anybody's ever said it that I've ever heard. He said, there are two jobs that the family court should be involved in. They should make a determination as to custody, and they should make a determination as to property. And that's it. It's not trying to fix people. Too many courts out there think that their job is to try to fix people, to try to fix a family, to try to fix a person. No, that is not the job of the courts. Do people need fixing? Sure. But it's not the purview of the courts, and there's no need for all these court-appointed persons. And so if that gets to the second issue, Fincham believes that the core issue is a civil rights issue. And at the core, we have a family court system that, in its center, compels litigants in an extortionate manner. They're extorted into do this and do that, or don't do this and don't do that, or else you will never see your children ever again. It is probably the worst and most heinous type of extortion there. It's biblical extortion. It's the extortion that anybody can understand because it's a fundamental relationship that parents have with their children. You have a fundamental right to be a parent, and children have a fundamental right to have their parents in their life. And so it goes against every societal and cultural norm, every religious ethos. It is extortion, plain and simple. And so Fincham believes it's a civil rights issue, and so do several others in the second legal phase, and that's the RICO cases that we're starting to see. We're starting to see family court RICO cases go to the federal government. And for the people who don't know what RICO is what's called Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organization. And back in the 50s, they had something called the Organized Crime Control Act. And that's when the Congress said, well, the mafia, the Italian mafia is, getting pretty bad, and we got to put something in place for the Italian mafia. But the Italian mafia was slick. They had been doing it for a lot of years, and they brought it over from the old country. Dave knows how the Sicilians do things. And so they brought it over from the old country, and it was a restaurant next to a bar, next to a laundromat, next to, a nail salon, and next to a pork store. So you got 5 legitimate businesses right there. And then in and out of those businesses went the rackets, they're running numbers, they're doing the gambling, they're getting stuff that falls off the back of trucks and selling it to people. They're doing all the illegal stuff is happening coalesced inside those businesses. So if you looked at any of those 5 businesses, you looked at the pork store, or if you looked at the bar, or if you looked at the restaurant, they all look like legitimate businesses. But there's all sorts of mischief going on there, makes it into a racketeer influenced corrupt organization in whole. Well, that is what we have in the family court. We have lawyers, and we have guardian ad litems, and we have therapists, and we have coordinators, and we got this, and we got that. And if you look at them on their own, they're legitimate professionals. But if you look at it in total, there's a lot of crap going on there. Not much different than what the Congress tried to get in the 1950s when they tried to get a handle on organized crime in relation to La Cosa Nostra of the Italian Mafia. And so we have several cases across the country right now that are RICO cases. And one is brought, I think one of the most exciting ones in my mind right now, you have Matt Grant, who's in St. Louis, Missouri. Matt Grant is a top 100 law firm partner, and he knows the system. He knows the judges, and he's been through it like most of the people on this call have through family court, and he got a raw deal, and he said, you people are corrupt, but you mess with the wrong one. I have the knowledge, the ability, and the desire to take you down. And he brought a RICO case, and the RICO case, it's a part RICO and it's part a straight civil rights claim. And I interviewed him last week, and it looks very, very promising. Another one that I've looked at is Rabbi Jacob Belinsky out in Colorado. He's already survived to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. They tried to dismiss his case. The 10th Circuit said, no, he's got a case here. You're going to discovery. So he's going to discovery in his case. Another case up in New York, There's a civil RICO related to Judge Eisenpress. That one looks very promising. There's another one in Chicago with Ken Gerard. He had a setback in his case. They're probably going to have to appeal. It's still alive, but they did basically say in the opinion that judicial immunity, this is an actual judge, judicial immunity is so strong that it wouldn't matter if you had the judge on tape receiving a bribe. They still would not be liable. That's what they said. They extended judicial immunity in that rule. I think it's going to get struck down. But you have a Chicago federal court judge saying that judicial immunity is so strong that they cannot be held liable for taking a bribe. So in my mind, I think that they just sanctioned judges to take bribes, because if they're immune for civil purposes, they're probably immune for criminal purposes as well. We saw that with immunity, and we saw that just recently with the presidential immunity. They said the president is immune from all civil and criminal activities in the office of the presidency, the federal office of the presidency. Well, if I'm the lawyer for a judge, and the rule is that the judge is immune for civil purposes, they're then immune for civil and criminal purposes, for all purposes. Or why else would you be a judge? So I don't think that ruling can stand, but that's what we're fighting here. We're fighting crazy judges and crazy rulings where they're saying that even if you have them on tape taking a bribe, it's not enough. So to get back to the point is, where's this thing going? Where's this thing? What is this reform movement about? What are the potential, wins that we can have? I outlined a couple. But what are the real impediments? And circling back to the first thing I said, it's the media. I think the media is a large impediment. And I just got a series of stories about Susan Massey, who's another journalist, and I'm very upset with that woman. Not because she didn't cover a family court case, because everybody has a story. You have thousands, hundreds of thousands of stories, and only so many can get covered. And so there's a limit on what one journalist can do or any journalist can take, and you can't compel somebody to write a story about you. But you can't, as a journalist, break the cardinal sin, and that is you can't cockblock, in plain English. You cannot kill their play. You can't go out there and you see one journalist trying to do something, let him go do it, because the goal here is to pursue the truth. At least if you're a bona fide investigative journalist that really is doing this for the right reasons, you are trying to get to the bottom of things. And the amount of material that the courts and the government and everyone else conceals and keeps from the light of day is immense. We get maybe one half of 1%, if that, it put in our hands as journalists that we can actually use it. So when we get something through a public access request, a public records request, that's kind of like manna from heaven. And a lot of times when they try to deny public records requests, to deny discovery, it's because they're trying to cover up the corruption. And so what Susan did to me was I had went after the Costa Mesa Police Department, as well as the Orange County District Attorney's Office on Julie's behalf. Julie had a divorce and a child custody issue, and they are withholding materials. My belief is to protect the sitting District Attorney of Orange County, Todd Spitzer. And so Spitzer, what Spitzer does is, he's got his hand in everything over there. And my belief is that Costa Mesa is not forthcoming for that reason. There's some damning materials in there. Well, Susan, I hit the Costa Mesa Police and I said, it's been requested under the Open Document Production Act in California that we have to give these documents. Please release them. And Susan Massey runs on the email where I've copied about 10 or 15 other journalists. And she said, "Oh, take me off this string. I want nothing to be involved with this." Well, then I come back and first of all, it's solidarity. You have to present a strong front. But because what that does is that cop's mind, who's sitting at a desk someplace, tells them, "Oh, you don't have to give out the documents." And those documents could be the difference between life and death for the kids. And that's what these people don't realize. But they don't. They say, "Okay, we don't have to give out documents." And they kill the story at that point. You have to go to court. You have to do all sorts of other things to try to get these documents. But Susan was unapologetic about it. She kind of was trying to double down about how great she was and how she's got all these ethics. Well, at the end of the day, I pulled out a 990s from the 501c that she runs, and she hasn't filed 990s since 2022. So it's like, honey, if you're going to go, don't throw. He who lives in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, type thing. So there are a lot of hypocrites, and so me and Dave were talking about this, and Dave actually had a bit where he was speaking, and he talked about journalistic treason. And I said, Dave, that's brilliant. That is like the most brilliant thing, because that's what's actually happening here. It's journalistic treason. It's treason to what journalism is. If you understand journalism at all in America, the American tradition of journalism, it's embodied in that First Amendment, right? It's either defamatory or it's not. It's either libelous or everything else is in. Unless you're defaming somebody and you're telling something that's maliciously not true, everything comes in bounds. So you have to allow for journalists to do their job and search for the truth. And when you have journalists that don't do that, you have to question why. And the big ones are the mainstream media outlets. They don't want to touch family court cases. And Dave just talked about it. They do not want to touch family court cases. And I think part of the reason is that the same lawyers and judges that are in the country clubs and the schools and everything else are the ones that are rubbing elbows with the large media executives. Right? Are you going to go to Chevy Chase Country Club, or are you going to in DC, or you're going to go to the New York Athletic Club in New York? They're the same people. It's their same social circles. It just gets to be unclean. They don't want to be in a situation. There's so much other news out there. Why do we need to, get into that? Because this is a huge moneymaker. The family court is a huge moneymaker for everybody. And so when you have it, they're there to suck the money out of regular people. It's different than a corporate litigation. Like you have, Microsoft versus Apple, right? They're huge corporations, multi-billion-dollar, legal budgets alone. They're going to go to war, and they can play all this game, but they have their PR spin doctors and everything else. They have all sorts of stuff that's happening, and they keep it where it is. But at the end of the day, the CEO and all the employees are still going to get paid at the end of the day. They're not going to bring those companies to starvation. The family court, that's exactly what their goal is. It's to bring the people there. If there's any money whatsoever, they're to bring them to starvation. Or if they don't have money, they have to show how well they can fix the family and the children to get federal money. And so that's the problem. We have journalists that are co-opted by what's going on. And I'm just very, very upset and worried about this because, we have it's supposed to be a profession, journalist. You just don't go out there and decide, I'm going to go be a journalist. You have to kind of learn it. Either you learn, you have to have an expertise, you have to hone your craft, you have to do a bunch of different things. You have to learn that there's a way to do it, and there's a way to search for the truth. And it becomes something that's pretty despicable, and it's something that is antithetical to the family court reform movement that we're all involved in.
Yeah, and I think you could also even say, Rich, that it touches on evil. I mean, if it's one thing on Wall Street we're used to is people justifying their bias when there's a hell of a lot of money at stake. But to just think of the leap that they make to justify what they're engaged in with this family terrorism, it just now jumps to a whole other level. And it's really absolutely it's just amazing to me how our forefathers saw this. I mean, what was the press in 1700s? Was it some dude on some papyrus, and they figured it out that it had to be the First Amendment, freedom of the press. And if that is what's at stake here right now, it's our whole way of life.
Well, Dave, that's brilliant in the sense that when's the first time they start talking about the courts? The Fourth and the Fifth Amendment. They don't do due process of the Fifth Amendment. The First Amendment is the First Amendment, and that was because what's necessary for an open society and for a democratic society or a constitutional republic like we have. You need to have a free flow of ideas, a free exchange of ideas, and the masses have to have their say. The people, the sovereign people, have to have their say. And so back in the day, the form of social media that they had was the town square, right? They had the town square. They had posts in the town square. They would put up posts in the town square, and information would be placed there. And even in things about, even stuff that was really, terrible. Like so-and-so stole 10 chickens from me, and I took them and I lashed them 8 times with a whip. That stuff would be posted in the middle of the town square for everyone to see because of the utter disdain that people would have for chicken thieves, So that's, I think, our first line of defense, or very much should be our first line of defense against this storm of fraud, this hurricane, the Category 5 hurricane of fraud that everyone is facing in the family courts. I think that when you put the shine the light on these people, you have the eye of vigilance on them. And Thomas Jefferson wrote about that, the eye of vigilance on them, on the courts. The courts are a secondary place to go. Justice is slow. Justice is expensive. And justice never kind of makes you whole. It really never, ever does. But you see almost immediately the results when the media is involved, when the public discourse takes up an issue. We saw this a few weeks ago with the Coldplay concert, right? That stuff's going to be in litigation for the next few years, but the masses have made their ruling on those people already. And the same thing happens with crooked judges and crooked lawyers and crooked family court people when they get exposed. Now, the problem is that too far and few between of them are exposed. The last time that we see these big people in earnest are either judges, family court judges that are engaged in other criminality, like the Cash for Kids scheme out in Pennsylvania, or there was a recent Utah one who was running a sex type thing, or something like that, where it's not, just the family court, they're doing something else. But the family court itself is the crime. When you look at the extortionate program, the fraud, the business model of fraud, as Dave likes to say, that itself is the crime. That should be shouted from the rooftops.
Exactly.
But also those who are doing the right thing that Fincham has said, and cutting back on this whole fraudulent model and doing only two things that are asked of the courts. Make a determination as to custody, make a determination as to property. Don't try to fix anybody and get the people out of the courthouse. Those people should be held in high esteem. The media today is doing nothing in the mainstream, the large outlets, and even independent media, even these 501c3s that are supposed to be watchdogs, they're not doing it either because they're beholden to donors. So we have a big problem in the media. I think there's a bit of a change coming, and a lot of the sparks in the legal stuff are going to make it a lot harder for the courts to be ignored, and for the findings of the courts that nothing is wrong to be respected. If the courts start finding that, there are problems, especially federal RICOs, or the legislature starts finding we have to change these things because they're a problem, then it has to follow suit in the media, I believe. I believe that's why those two legal changes and those two legal parts of the family court reform are so important. But
well, I wish I did have the confidence that you did in the courts fixing themselves. As you know, in our group, and just a reminder here, this is not a Facebook group. Okay, this is a public ledger. This was me figuring out, oh my God, what if I knew in year one what I've learned in 14 years? And the best way to describe this here is just to highlight how many layers of the onion you have to peel over, how many years to really, really understand what's going on, is one of the conversations that I had with Rich, another mind-bending conversation. And then we're going to open this up for questions here, guys. I'm going to lob one more question to Rich that I think is extremely important, okay, for everybody to hear. But I was monitoring the comments here, and I saw a comment from Tamsin, okay, that I hear every single day, and that is, oh my God, wait till you guys hear about the level of fraud in my case. I've got evidence coming out the wazoo here. I hear that every single day. And I think this is one of these peels of the onion, because I remember being on the phone with you, Rich, and even in like maybe 6 months into a relationship, but I'm telling you my story, and I'm going through the complex PTSD of telling you every nook and cranny of every detail, and you're and I finally say, Rich, I'm telling you stuff that should have your jaw drop to the ground here. Why are you not giving me this kind of response? You're like, Dave, because I hear this 100 times a week. You don't understand what I hear on a weekly basis, because all of us in this thing, we're so buried by our individual case. We're so traumatized by it. We don't have time to really look at the overall numbers. What are the patterns? Okay. What are the norms here? And this is one of these great, mysteries that is the last thing that you learn, right? This, oh my God, it's, this level of outrageous fraud and outrageous evidence, and how upfront they are, because they have no regulator. They have no regulator. But the question I have for you, Rich, is I'd heard this from somebody recently, and it really struck a chord here. it has to the number of journalists that don't cover this stuff. Okay. I heard for the first time that there are special laws around covering CPS cases versus family court fraud with regards to the penalties that journalists can endure by reporting wrong on a CPS. Did I hear that right?
It's two things. One is that you have a higher risk in these types of cases to get sued, right? That's the big thing that the media companies are worried about, a lawsuit. You put out something that and they feel like, oh, you did X, Y, and Z. They'll find a trial lawyer that'll come and bring a $10 million case against a media company because they're in deep pocket. So the big guys don't want to do it because these are higher risk litigation stuff. The CPS stuff, the secondary stuff is there are some places and states where that material, it may be very well be a criminal issue related to having some certain materials. So certain materials, it would be a crime for it to be leaked, right? I don't think that it would be, or would pass First Amendment scrutiny in most cases, leaking it to a reporter. But that being said, there are some laws on the books that they'll try to throw at you and say, you should have this material, where'd you get it, that type of stuff. Try to make you break privilege, try to make you, try to throw you into jail if you're a reporter, if you have it. Where'd you get this report, that type of thing. Certain states will do that. And it's a little crazy that we're in America in 2025 and that's what they would do to a reporter. But those are the two issues that they're worried about. They're worried about reporters getting strung on by the courts for getting material, doing their job too well. Or number two, getting sued for defamation. Those are the two big.
Okay. And reminder, guys, to ask a question, you want to hit the little hand signal at the very, very bottom there. That'll create a queue for questions. You got me thinking about another issue related to this where, the misconceptions that people have. I'm a numbers guy on Wall Street. And when I started doing all this research into this, I started looking at these numbers here and seeing, oh my God, there's like got to be 20,000 legal processes. And it's not like it's 90% fail, 10% succeed, 99% won. When it's 100% failure, we know on Wall Street, it becomes a different thing. Now it's a different animal. It started out a dog. It's now a cat. Okay. And that's why our whole process here is people stop wasting your time on these. Again, I don't mean to, insult anybody here, but if there's been thousands of RICO cases that have all failed and the current system is still in place, what makes sense about talking about the next RICO case?
Well, Dave, on that point, let me tell everybody real quick. I know that Heather just sent that she's working on RICO and other people are interested in that. The problem with RICO to this point has been two doctrines that are from the United States Supreme Court. And those are called the Younger Extension Doctrine and the Rooker-Feldman Doctrine. And in general terms, all that is we have federalism in this country. So there are certain activities that are left to the states where the federal government won't get involved. Even the federal courts won't get involved. They're going to defer to the states. Some of those issues include family court, family law issues. They include the state criminal law, the state property law, real estate law. And so the feds aren't going to get involved unless you can make a high showing. And that Rooker-Feldman and the other extension doctrine say, you got to show me that federal intervention is necessary. You have to show me that you cannot get any relief from the state court. And what the Matt Grant and what the Rabbi Belitsky and what the other RICOs that are successful now are showing is that in the state courts, they petitioned everybody, and there's corruption. They show actual corruption that's outside of the court process, that's outside the four corners of the court opinion, and they show that the people that are responsible in the state for monitoring it are in on it. So that's what gets you past it in those RICOs. So that was the real question. I know we have some questions, so I want to hit them.
Great. Yes, let's go to Isabel Reyes out in New Jersey.
Oh, hi, Dave. Thank you for having me jump on the call. Richard, we know a lot of the similar people. I've sent you quite a bit of information. My judge is the famous Judge Bogart.
Yes.
From Morris
Bogart.
That has jailed women for just speaking out and trying to exercise due process. My divorce went on for 5 years. Just recently, he signed the divorce decree, but did not make any substantial decision based on custody or spousal support or child support. I'm the one that's only been getting $200 a month from the beginning of time, and I have I have twins. He's the one that dragged me through.
Isabel, please, we don't have time for people to go into their individual cases. Please make it relevant to the topic at hand, okay?
Well, my topic tonight is pretty much just asking that I sat through a trial. He wouldn't let me present evidence. He won't let me then do any part, and he wants to put in a decision. I'm to the point where I need to have my information because I have 5 years of audio, video, everything to document that. Not only has he lied on stand, and I'm talking about the judge. I'm talking about the judge. I have all the transcripts and everything else. And no one wants to talk about it. I'm very
Isabella, you have my details. Shoot it to me. We'll talk offline, and I'll put together something for you, okay? Because this is Bogart. It's right for a follow-up on that. I'll tell you something about Jersey as a tidbit. They have an SF squad for the New Jersey courts. I know Dave Weigel and myself are both on their radar. They follow everything that I do. I have 30 or 40 reads from the court security service. They probably are going to monitor this conversation, but they have a court security service that is looking at family court litigants and people that help.
I know that there are people here call that aren't people that are necessarily good actors, but I'm very clear about my position for the past 5 years. I've been on Slam the Gamble. I've ran for office in Morris County, and that's cost me very much.
Yeah,
all about it, Isabella.
Isabella, but
offline, and we'll get together.
You bring up a great point, Isabella, but we've been speaking for a long time. Okay, we did a protest in your court with your judge, with the posters up of his name. Okay, we spoke to a whole bunch of people in New Jersey, and nobody wanted to follow our path. Okay, and 2 months after I did that protest, a childhood friend called me up and said, Dave, I don't know what you did over there, but I got the first fair trial of my entire divorce. I went in there, my ex started talking the same shit she always does. The judge shut her down mid-sentence, okay?
Well,
Part of it,
that was on
people are offering alternative solutions, and a lot of people are hell-bent on, no, you're waiting for the court to be a court, okay? We're asking people in this group here to understand this, you're not in a legal process.
Nope.
You're asking the mafia to rule against the mafia.
Absolutely.
Bogart does hate women. Okay. I always say this is not a gender issue. That judge hates women. Okay.
That guy
but now we're asking and demanding our group, when you're in here, to please be open-minded to what we're saying about why we use the law for defense only, but we don't waste our energy on the 20,001st try at a legal process of the court to finally show up to be a court. Okay.
No,
it is really embedded deeply in people's psyche. It's a hard leap to make, but when you do, it's very freeing because you understand now your job is to reveal. Bogart hates that he's on our wall of shame. Wait till we start adding the list of victims below him. When it's 10, when it's 15, when it's 20, I realize this is not a path that anyone's ever prescribed before. But when you have a monster this big and this ugly and this disastrous, it's gonna take some different thinking than what everybody else has done over the last 20 years. If you're thinking the same way as other people have thought the last 20 years, you're gonna have the same results. Okay.
Dave, you and I have very similar backgrounds. I've been in finance for over 30 years. I've never met anything so corrupt. But I will tell you, with Monica's protest, it was on February 14th. I got notice maybe 3 days before, and I couldn't take off and be there. The bottom line is, with the court watchers, if we're not communicating with each other effectively, guess what? The last time I put in my information, he would not allow court watchers. He does not want witnesses. He does not want.
That's why we didn't do court watching. That's why we did a protest and we put his name on a wall of shame. We've got to get to the next ones. Thank you very much for your question.
Thanks, Isabella. I'll talk to you offline.
Abdul Smith, please. I think you're still on silent. Please unmute yourself, Abdul. Abdul, you there? Or did you run to the bathroom? Okay, we're going to go to C and S, clean out junk removal.
We already know that's me. Unfortunately, I got under my junk removal.
Okay, I'm busting your balls.
First of all, Mr. Luthmann, thank you for coming on. I mean, this is oh my gosh, it's nothing new, but it's sickening. I have three. I'll repeat it. I wrote it down here. First of all, and again, I understand there's a lot of variables, different situations, same flavor, but generally, how long once you get your teeth into a story do you see that you're able to like complete or get something? Number two is, with what you've done already, have you seen traction like to expose this the type of corruption we're talking about? And number three is, with what Trump has done with Doge at the national level, do you see like an interest, like a little bit more interest from the public in uncovering this stuff and being a little bit more open?
Thanks, Mike.
Last one first. The Trump wing of the Republican Party is the one that is pushing this stuff in state reform in red states, like or in not so much red states, but red and purple states: Arizona, Idaho, North Dakota. Those are conservative, Republicans. They're the MAGA people the people that are dancing at the Republican National Convention. They're the same legislators that are pushing these ad hoc committees, and you see how they go. And you'll find other side of the aisle. You'll find people from the far left that are non-establishment, people as well. So you have the middle establishment, Republicans and Democrats, that are against this stuff, but you have the anti-establishment wings of both sides that are kind of for this reform. The answer with Trump, yeah, they like this idea about this being a civil rights issue, this being a fiscal responsibility issue, and that's where I see the strongest with this going. With respect to media and the court, and your case or anybody's case, I'm going to give you the cardinal rule of doing this. Okay, if you're going to go to the media, you can't stop. Okay, and David will tell you, he'll be the first one to tell you, you can't write one story or two stories in spec results. You've got to keep on bombarding these people, bombarding them, because that's the only way it's going to work. If they see one or two stories, they do the ostrich. They put their head in the ground and they hope that the storm passes, and they pull it out and they go back to business as usual. You have to keep on hitting them. You have to keep on hitting everybody involved in the case. You have to go like it's a Cherokee assault. Take hatchets out and ready to go fire. Because that's the only way that these people, that's the only way they understand. That's the only way that you're going to get anything out of it. Because you have to shine light. That's the only way to do it, is to keep on going. It takes some time, yeah. Sometimes it takes, it's not like I'm not the New York Times. So if you put something in the New York Times on the front page, it's going to have a huge result right away. But even in the family courts, Dave's probably tested. Even if Dawson were in the New York Times on the front page once, I don't even think that would be enough. They would still find a way to kind of like weasel into their holes for a month or two and try to behave, and then they go right back to everything that they are. So you have to keep on attacking. So you get on the case and you get the media, you have to keep the media sustained, and you have to keep the media going on the issues. And I try to do that with everybody who brings me stuff. I always like to bring follow-ups. Isabel is a perfect example. I did a whole bunch of stuff on Bogart, and I did a whole bunch of stuff with Monica Ciardi. And the biggest thing with Monica was we got her out of jail. That was what I saw was the logical endpoint for my intense coverage. I'm still going to do follow-ups about Bogart and everything else when he comes along. Eisenpress is another one up in New York. When something comes wrong, Eisenpress, I'm going to hit that because I've hit her hard before. And I've hit other judges that are just some of the worst. Some in Chicago, some of the Bierman judges, the Bierman law firm. You have other judges, you have Dawson, and you have, what's her name? You have Marshall, Waterman Marshall in New York City, and you have some of these other just maniacs. So in Colorado, you have some crazies. You have Connecticut, you have a bunch of crazies. So the same names keep on coming up. So that's the issue.
Okay.
I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you. And just a quick reminder, because these are open calls that we do as an outreach, okay, to people that are casually following what we're doing but don't understand how precise and surgical our plan is. This took 15,000 hours of my blood, sweat, and tears of thinking through, and it's very deep psychology based. The reason we ask demand that people show up with their own name that matches their case number is because we are collecting data. Data is only data if it's true, okay? Also in social media, okay, when you are yourself and you can be identified as yourself, there's a self-correcting mechanism. People are willing and able to lie and do other things when they know it can't really come back to them. Okay. We are very strict about these rules because we have to be collecting data. Okay. So we're not just being pains in the ass here. There's for very, very specific reasons, because what we are doing, all right, is when you follow our steps, what we are doing is giving you access to Richard Luthmann. Okay. A lot of people don't know the press is an option because there's media strategy, there's costs involved, there's networks, the media is just not okay. Rich, how many emails and requests for you to cover their individual story do you get a month?
I get I probably get hundreds a month. Yeah, that's the thing. I get at least dozens, but it's over 100. And the fact is, everybody's got stories, and everybody's got emergency, and that's true. Like, everybody's life has a deadline. The problem is that I'm not a big media company, number one, and number two, I'm not ProPublica, or one of these people that has or getting a NIH grant where I can sit around and just, okay, yeah, that's that. So the news gathering cost is mine as well. So that's part of the issue here. But that in and of itself, it keeps me open to my ability to not be beholden, in the sense that I'm beholden to the truth. So right. And some people pay me for a lot of that I do. And if they pay me, I tell them in the very beginning, I have an engagement that says, you're paying me for news gathering. And if you don't like the story that I write, tough nookies.
I've seen you do that. I've seen you do that. Okay.
I know, I've done it for people.
I said, okay, if Rich writes a story, you better be happy with the truth.
Theodora.
You better have the truth on your side, because Rich is going to write the truth. Okay.
She tried to tell me a bill of goods, and I told the truth, and she got all pissy that I was crazy. I said, no, I'm telling the truth of the story. It wasn't so bad to you. I just wasn't, sycophantic.
She wanted you to pitch.
I had another one.
She wanted you to pitch her story.
Tried to sell me a bill of goods, and I put a war with these guys. They tried to, when you try to lie to an investigative journalist, it's not that smart. It's really not that smart.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go over to Dave Thurston. Bye-bye.
Who's next? There we go.
David Thurston.
Hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
can you hear me now? Oh, hey, Rich, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
So I had a question. Like, well, let me just go right to, now that you're saying that, could I pay you to do a story on my case?
Yeah, we'll talk offline. I will talk to anybody that wants offline. I have to talk to you very briefly about what the scope is.
It's media strategy. And
I'm not doing your case. You're not paying me for a story. It's not anything like that. You would engage me to news gather. So you would hand me, what's going on. I would take a look at it. I would have a media strategy about it, and I would news gather and figure it out. If you hand it to me, I'm one of the few people that'll tell you, save your money. There's not much I could do for you if that's the case. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, and let me interject here a second, okay, and explain, Dave, okay, that this is the purpose of my charity, okay, is that the charity is covering the media strategy costs, okay, for Richard Luthmann, because we are, and this is how you volunteer and why people volunteer. Here we are, an efforts-based meritocracy. The more you do for this organization, the more this organization does for you. If you choose to volunteer and break your ass for this organization, you get prioritized. Your case gets prioritized. One of those things is marrying the problem of, I really need a story, but I don't have money for media engagement. Hello, welcome to the Family Court Fraud Warrior Project. That's what we're here for. All right, so I just want to put that out there.
If somebody tells me, so-and-so has a case, next week, and they need court watchers, they need something out there, and they're a great person that's been doing a lot of good work for a lot of people and needs the help, hell yeah, I'll write a story, just to create some awareness, to get court watchers in there to watch something, and to put the story out there. I have no problem doing that. But if you want me to get into a deeper dive as to the people, to learn these people, there's no learning curve for me if you're Bogart or Eisenpress or these other judges. You can tell, you come right along, it's like riding a bicycle. But you come to me and say, I'm in Duluth, Minnesota, and I have Judge Johnson. Oh, I don't know Judge Johnson. Oh, you don't know. I can tell you about Judge Johnson. less is me reading, a whole bunch of stuff on Judge Johnson. Now, I don't mind doing that. It's just if I did that for everybody, I wouldn't have any
You
ability
didn't
to
you didn't
write.
know Dawson. You didn't know Dawson when we started talking.
We didn't know. I had a learning curve with Dawson. That was the point. And then I found how dirty this woman was with the IDV part, and then notes how dirty he was, and knocking off that part, and then Raul Felder, who trained him, and then everything. There's like so many different layers to some of these cases. So it
Hence
takes a
the
while.
media strategy. It's not paying for an article. It's media strategy. We use the law to stay out of jail. We use the media for offense to see results. We have 14 successes in this organization that are nowhere out there. Okay. No one's got their kids back by force. No one has pushed out an attorney that used to get $500,000 retainers from business. Nowhere have we been able to provide a template where, I was getting calls till 2:00 in the morning saying, Dave, if you go to New Jersey to do a protest, they will slam your face to the ground. That's the most corrupt. You're going to go away for 6 months. And I said the night before, directly to them, I said, well, they better smile fucking pretty for the camera, because I had the documentary crew with me. Okay. All right, guys, make the leap. Okay. In this group, we use the law for defense and the media for offense. We do protests because we take a look at court watching while we think it's important, while the mafia is still the mafia, and they get away with 1,000 times turning away everybody. And we've seen it 1,000 times, because why? There's no regulator. They can do whatever the fuck they want. So guys, we've got to think deeper here. Okay. What are we dealing with? If you're waiting for the court to be a court, you are engaging in the emperor has no clothes. That is your CPSD talking. Okay. And I'm in this 2 years. I'm getting my patients are getting thin. Okay. One model is showing success. Other models consistently show thousands of failures. This is insanity. Okay. Look at what's working. All right. Whether it's a leap of faith or not, look at what's working. All right. Now, Amy Duncan, you're next.
I put up my hand for Roy because he couldn't figure out how to do it.
Okay.
Okay, then Roy. That's very nice of you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
So I actually found out about this meeting today, about this group. I found out about Richard today just by Googling Morristown judges incompetent. And the first thing that comes up is the piece that he made about Bogart. And I was like, oh my God. So I've been in this mess for about going on 6 years now. Bogart is one of the 4 judges that resided on my case. And at the moment, it's Caroline Oliveira.
She's another beaut.
Yes. My name is Roy. I can give you my case number. It's FM 14-1030-20. Again, state of New Jersey, Morristown County. I have been under a support order of $7,500 a month that grew to $8,100, that grew to $9,100 a month from 2021. My tax returns are $56,000 a year. And yet I was ordered to pay $8,000 a month. That's one of the issues. Now, because of this, I am currently being garnished at 52% of my wages, leaving me unable to meet basic living expenses. At the same time, my current spouse, soon to be ex, has ignored discovery orders, withheld financial information without consequences. The court enforces every order against me, but when she fails to comply, like not providing required financial documents or not keeping our children insured, nothing happens. Right. This has left me bankrupt while she benefits from omissions and misrepresentations that were never corrected.
Roy, who's the lawyer for your ex to be?
Her name is Alyssa Engelberg.
What firm is she with?
Hagen, Nunn, and
okay.
Weigel.
Yeah, I know those folks. Okay, listen, try to get me offline. Okay, I'll talk to you.
I actually emailed you, Richard.
Okay, well, you email me again. I get dozens.
I bet.
Listen,
Roy,
today I probably had 15 people email me with stuff out of the blue and stuff. Okay. And there's stuff that I want to do. I just don't have the ability to do it all. So if you don't get me the first, second, or third time, just keep going.
Roy,
I'll get there, especially a Bogart. Okay.
Right now, from what we know, okay, we did the protest for Monica Ciardi. Bogart was her judge. Isabella, who was just on, Bogart. Now you, okay, another Bogart. We need you guys to be able to put your names down underneath his picture on our wall of shame and start off the list of victims that can go around the world and collect another victim every single day.
It's easy for
This
me
is
to
a
write an article.
behavioral change.
Yeah, it's easy for me to write a Bogart article if I have 4 or 5 different victims. I could put everybody together and we can really hit Bogart pretty hard in an article or a series of articles.